There's a critical distinction between actively resisting the fascist federal government's attempts to consolidate its power and limply opposing them. This is illustrated by our big city mayors' responses to the invasions of their cities by federal forces. On the one hand, without exception, they have issued heartening denunciations of the illegality, lack of any need for, and destructiveness of the federal interventions. On the other hand, their placement within our political system blinds them to the critical distinction between rhetoric and resistance as fascism consolidates itself in our country. The city of Chicago has been a model for the strongest practical measures taken. They will not let their police or other agencies support ICE operations or interfere with protests. They have sued to force the withdrawal of federal forces, and they have set up programs to facilitate granting permits to demonstrators, as well as Know Your Rights programs. By normal standards, these look pretty good, but these are not normal times, and conventional means have never stopped significant fascist movements, much less fascist governments that are already in power and working to extend their power. The president of this country recently addressed 800 assembled military leaders to tell them that they need to deal with
the war from within. We should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military.
This is a government that sends in masked, anonymous thugs to beat up, brutalize, kidnap, and sometimes kill people. It has no regard for truth or for legality, and lies to the courts or defies their orders, and it's gerrymandering to make sure it can stay in power. Because these federal forces daily commit state and federal felonies, including depriving people of their civil rights under color of authority, the mayors of these cities could theoretically train their police departments in the political propriety and need for opposing what's happening in their cities at the federal level, on the legality of making arrests of federal agents who are committing felonies in their presence, and effective tactics for doing so in what will obviously be tricky situations. Moreover, they would have their departments making plans to track the actions of the federal forces so that they could be there to witness what is happening and make arrests when necessary or threaten to do so. And they need to widely publicize the fact that they are taking all these measures so that the decision makers in government and in the billionaire class recognize what they are up against if they're going to continue these invasions. Beyond that, they are in an excellent position to organize mass resistance actions, which is the primary thing that's needed to stop the rise of fascism in its tracks. When I was letting the book Blessed Disillusionment come through me, a piece about this was included. What we would call liberal or centrist parties were unable to stop the ascendancy of fascism in Central Europe in the 1930s. In contrast, as George Lakey and others have shown, massive militant labor movements and their parties did halt comparable threats in Scandinavia, forcing instead broad welfare state social contracts. We now need the equivalent of those movements. Truly massive movements of ordinary people do work. If you ask ChatGPT, where has civil resistance to the presence of federal forces in major cities caused them to retreat or cancel operations, you'll get a long list going back into the 19th century of massive actions by ordinary people, farmers, workers, others, where federal forces were occupying cities or areas where people lived, and the resistance forced them to withdraw. Here and now, we have yet to organize ourselves at that level, but there have been tactical victories like rescues of people being kidnapped by ICE agents or operations, raids that have been forced to be canceled when large crowds showed up and turned the agents back. More significantly, a number of organizations here in the San Francisco Bay Area began training people and setting up mobilization networks and organizing soon after Trump began threatening to send federal troops to San Francisco. October 22nd, they learned of the arrival of an advance contingent of about 100 agents at a Coast Guard station to begin to prepare for a major surge of federal forces here in San Francisco in particular, 2.5 days later. But that triggered significant protests and confrontations immediately, and I have no doubt that the administration and the billionaire friends who called him knew of fusion center intelligence reports of the extent to which this area was ready to resist. So something like 14 hours later, the president posted on Truth Social that the entire operation was indefinitely paused and it has not been resumed. So the power of the people is real, but we have to organize ourselves to exercise it. Okay, back to our big city mayors and back to what Blessed Disillusionment has to say about the dynamics affecting them. Loud complaining is tolerable. Protests are tolerable. But mobilizing millions of people to take direct action, such as general strikes, coordinated tax resistance, blocking access to government or media buildings, and so forth, is not. If we learned to do that, we could use direct action to stop the horrors of corporate dominance of our polity, economy, and society. You cannot succeed as a politician in the two-party system if you support a strategy that could lead to that result. So my message here is not about Democrats changing, nor is it trying to discourage support for what is courageous within their paradigm. But I get pissed off when I see pitches for donations to a fund to support new Democratic candidates that says, donate to stop ICE. It is a lie that that is going to stop ICE in the long term or the short term. What I'm trying to say is we cannot rely on elected officials to take the lead in saving us from the fascist disaster. We have to learn to organize and mobilize ourselves, ordinary people, day laborers, people in trade unions, the churches, our neighborhoods, going way beyond the usual suspects of activists to build and build and build the massive movement that can not only stop these guys, they're mostly guys, but also overthrow the old order and create a new society that we run for the benefit of all.